Welcome to Michigan's WW1 Centennial News Report for March 2018. Panthéon de la Guerre. The State Report. On March 2, 2018, Michigan's WW1 Centennial Commission met at the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs building in Lansing, Michigan. Special guests were Matt Van Acker and Jerry Benson from the Capitol Tour and Information Service. These two individuals volunteer for Save the Flags program, which saves Michigan's World War I, Spanish American, and Civil War battle flags that used to be in the Rotunda building. This photo shows Matt Van Acker showing off the new poster, World War I Battle Flags of Michigan. On February 26th at 20 Monroe Live in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan's World War I Centennial Commission presented the heavy metal band Sabaton with a Certificate of Excellence. Sabaton's songs are based on historic events, and we especially like their World War I based songs because they educate more people about the history of World War I. Some of their songs are Angels Calling, Firestorm, Cliffs of Gallipoli, and Lost Battalion.
Thank you. My name is Scott Garish. This is Kevin Garish and Dennis Kupinski. We are with the Governor's World War I Centennial Commission and the Michigan Military Heritage Museum. We're here to present these guys with an award from Governor Snyder and the museum. So, in a military manner, attention to orders. The Certificate of Excellence and Challenge Coin is presented to Sabaton from Michigan's World War I Centennial Commission. Your songs, including, but not certainly limited to, Angels Calling, Cliffs of Gallipoli, Price of a Mile, Last Dying Breath, Lost Battalion, oh, that sounds like a request, are introducing more people to history, and especially to the history of the First World War. We would like to thank you and hope that you continue to write and perform songs about the Great War and beyond.
The list right there. I think it's time we play one of those songs, don't you think? In memory of those who lost their lives in World War I, Lost Battalion! From the land as they made their stand is strong and the legend still lives on. 1918, the great parade is on. A battalion is lost in the from the land as they made their stand is written on. Never die and the stakes are high. As they made their stand, police were gone. They would never comply, they would rather die.
On March 7th, at the Masonic Temple in downtown Detroit, Commissioner Dennis Kupinski met with the Detroit Veterans Day Parade Group. The topic for discussion was making the Veterans Day Parade in honor of Detroit Mayor Eugene Van Antwerp. He was also a longtime city councilman and national commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars in the mid-1930s. Without Eugene Van Antwerp, Veterans Day would not exist. During his tenure as National Veterans of Foreign War Commander, Eugene Van Antwerp helped congressmen and senators pass legislation to make Armistice Day 1938 a national holiday. Since then, World War II in Korea, they changed the name from Armistice Day to now Veterans Day on November 11th. On November 11th, 2018, at 11 a.m., the armistice bell ringing ceremony would take place. In 1918, on the 11th day, in the 11th month, at the 11th hour, the Allies and Central Powers agreed to a ceasefire that would mark the end of the World War. The National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. will hold a bell ringing ceremony at 11 a.m. on Sunday, November 11th, 2018, to commemorate the centennial of the armistice. Local churches, schools, courthouses, and other entities are invited to participate at the time of this nationwide occasion at each respective time zone. It is with high hopefulness that we will all join in this nationwide commemoration and hope and prayer for a perpetual, world-lasting peace. For information, contact Jerry Benson, 517-373-2353. Just a reminder to check the latest events for Michigan's WW1 Centennial. Please go to ww1cc.org/Michigan. One century ago, March 1918, the first recorded case of the Spanish flu was at Funston Army Camp, Kansas. It started a worldwide pandemic, killing between 50 to 100 million people. On March 6, 1918, the USS Cyclops, a Navy collier, disappears in the Bermuda Triangle. On March 7, 1918, President Woodrow Wilson authorizes the U.S. Army's Distinguished Service Medal, which is a medal for meritorious service to the government, a non-combat award. Also on March 7, 1918, 5 German Reisenflugzeug bombers raided England on the first ever moonless night raid. One of them dropped over 2,000 pounds of bombs on Warrington Crescent near London's Paddington Station, killing 23 and injuring 39. On March 8, 1918, Leon Trotsky is appointed Minister for War of Russia. On March 16, 1918, Jeffrey O'Hara's song, KKK Katie, was published. On March 19, 1918, the U.S. Congress approves daylight savings time. This is to save energy and increase productivity. March 21, 1918, the Germans launched their spring offensive, which was a series of German attacks along the Western Front, and marks the deepest advances by either side since 1914. The Germans had realized that their only remaining chance of victory was to defeat the Allies before the overwhelming human and material resources of the United States could be fully deployed. They also had a temporary advantage of numbers, afforded by nearly 50 divisions freed by Russia's surrender. On March 23, 1918, the Germans used a new weapon called the Paris gun. It fired a long-range shell over 75 miles to bomb Paris. The Panthéon de la Guerre was a monumental artwork painted in Paris during the First World War, a circular panorama 402 feet in circumference and 45 feet high. It has been described as the largest painting in the world. The painting included full-length portraits of around 6,000 wartime figures from France and its allies. The centerpiece was a temple to glory, with portraits of French figures crowding on a staircase of heroes, topped by a gold statue of victory holding aloft a crown of laurels in each hand, on a plinth bearing the motto, Aux Heroes, to the heroes. At the base of the staircase, French political and military leaders stood around a French 75mm cannon. On the opposite side of the circular painting was a depiction of a war memorial with 4 bronze poilus holding a coffin covered in the French flag, on a plinth inscribed Pro Patria, and a single woman dressed in black weeping beside a wreath bearing the words Aux Heroes Ignores, to the forgotten heroes. National groups of figures from the Allied nations lined the painting to either side. 4 European allies, the United Kingdom, Belgium, Italy, and Portugal on one side, and 19 others, including the US, Greece, Latin America, Serbia, Montenegro, Tsarist Russia, Romania, and Japan on the other. The figures were mostly men, but also some female nurses, nuns, and spies such as Edith Cavell. The work depicted some French cuirassiers, troops from Morocco, and veterans, and included a continuous topographical landscape depicting the battlefields of France and Belgium from the North Sea to Switzerland. While Czechoslovakia did not exist before World War I, during the war the Czechoslovak Legion recruited men to fight with the Allies on 3 fronts: France, Italy, and Russia. The Czechoslovak Legion in Russia was composed mostly of POWs from the Austro-Hungarian army. On the far right of the main panel on the painting, the last flag shown is that of the Czechoslovak Legion. The Legion's flag generally consisted of a white bar over a red bar with a coat of arms of Bohemia, Moravia, Silesia, and Slovakia in the corners, and a crown with garlands in the center, or the initials CS intertwined as seen here in detail from the painting, and a photo of the Legion in France posing with their flag. This stylized CS symbol was used extensively throughout Czechoslovakia during the First Republic, 1918 to 1939. Work began on the painting in September of 1914, after the Battle of the Marne, coordinated by French artists Pierre Carrier-Belleuse and Augustus Francois Marie Gourget, with contributions from around 130 other artists. The work was undertaken as a private commercial venture with state support. The completed painting was displayed in Paris in a specially built building next to the Hotel des Invalides and inaugurated by French President Raymond Poincaré in October of 1918. Visitors approached along dark corridors to a central viewing platform. It was visited by over 8 million people between 1918 and 1927. In 1927, the painting was acquired by U.S. businessmen and sent to New York, where it was on display at Madison Square Garden. Some small changes were made to the work to make it more attractive to U.S. audiences. Colonel Edward M. House, by then a politician, was painted out and replaced by U.S. Ambassador to France Myron T. Herrick. An African-American soldier was also added. The work went on tour of the United States, displayed at the Washington Bicentennial Fair in Washington, D.C. in 1932, at the Century of Progress exhibition in Chicago, 1933 and 1934, at the Great Lakes exhibition at Cleveland, Ohio, 1936-1937, and the Golden Gate International Exhibition in San Francisco in 1940. It went into storage in 1940 and was acquired by restaurant entrepreneur William Hosner for $3,400. Hosner donated the work to Leroy Daniel McMorris in 1956 to be adapted for display at Memory Hall in the Liberty Memorial in Kansas City, Missouri. McMorris greatly reduced the size of the work and modified it to emphasize the United States' contribution to the First World War. Only 7% of the original work was retained, and large French sections were left out. The reconfigured work has been described as a Reader's Digest version in a Cold War U.S. nationalist context. McMorris also modified some unrecognizable figures in the U.S. delegation to represent later U.S. figures, such as Presidents Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Harry S. Truman. President Truman was also a First World War veteran and a Missouri native. Colonel House was added back in, and McMorris also added portraits of the artists Carrier-Belleuse and Gourget. The bouquet of flowers previously painted in at the feet of Edith Cavell was placed in front of Woodrow Wilson. Other fragments of the original painting have survived. 2 10-foot by 16 feet fragments were displayed at Hosner's restaurant in Baltimore until 1999, and they were then sold. The building that housed the work in Paris was also destroyed in 1960.
Wake up